Unfortunately, at the time that I was doing most of the modifications to the Z, I did not have my YouTube channel and I was not documenting each thing as I did it. So I'm gonna have to go back and show you guys or talk about things I've already done. And today we're gonna go over removing all of the unnecessary cooling pipes on the 350Z, especially the VQ35DE engine. Obviously, in a street car, there's a lot of different things that you're gonna use the coolant for, but you're not going to need in a track or race type scenario. So all my coolant system consists of now is the radiator, a large pipe that connects it to the engine on both sides, and the swirl pot. That is literally it. There's no other tubing, nothing else that the radiator does. The coolant goes from the engine to the radiator and back, and it passes through the swirl pot to help bleed the system continuously. Those are the only parts in my coolant system. Now, if you look at a stock DE, you have two different pipes in the back of the engine bay that are used for your heater. So they go into the cabin, go through your heat exchanger, and then back out. You also have some extra pipe on the passenger side, and that big pipe with a bunch of different barbs on it, one of them goes to heat your throttle body, and then that comes back in and connects over here. One crosses over to help the engine heat up faster for emissions purposes. One drops down off the passenger side, goes to the oil warmer, and then comes back up again for emissions and for places that have cold environments. And I think that's it. So you have the two heater hoses, you have the two hoses for the oil warmer, the two hoses for the throttle body, and the crossover pipe, the crossover pipe for emissions. Now, while these are not robbing you of horsepower or negatively affecting the performance of your engine, they are adding complexity, such as one more hose to burst while you're driving on track. That's more weight and that's more coolant, and you're asking the coolant to do more things. So coolant and oil are interacting and you can't isolate those temperatures as much as you want to. That crossover pipe, not doing anything once the car is warm, it's just there wasting space, taking up room that you could use for some hood ducting or other items. It's cluttering your engine bay, it's making the car more difficult to work on. Anytime you can remove unnecessary items, you're removing weight, you're removing complexity, and you're making everything easier to work on, and honestly, a better looking engine bay. Now, as I've already covered in the swirl pot video, I told you what that does, but to do a quick overview, coolant is now coming out of this bar right here, goes in the swirl pot. As it spins and forms a little cyclone, bubbles will collect at the middle of the top of the cyclone and then sit here at the top, while the coolant keeps spinning its way down and drains out the bottom and then goes into that little bar by the thermostat. So this is constantly going to be bleeding my coolant system, so no matter what, if I get a little air bubble or cavitation or something, I can keep going and it'll pull that air back out of the system and it won't get trapped somewhere else and cause some sort of catastrophic failure. And as I covered in the coolant delete video, which is showing you once you delete all this extra stuff, what you need for the car to keep running, I have a pipe that comes off a barb on the back of the engine that comes up to a block-off plate right here. So I was able to get rid of this entire pipe on the driver's side that sits below the intake and above the header. That whole pipe served no purpose in this scenario because one barb connected to the crossover pipe, one barb connected to the heater hose, and then another barb, I believe, connected to the throttle body. You didn't need any of that. So I brought a hose from the back to a block-off plate down here, and what that does is it brings hot coolant from the back of the motor to the front right by the thermostat, so that the thermostat will still heat up properly and allow the coolant to flow. Without that, it'll just build up pressure behind the thermostat. All of that will be nice and cold, and your car will overheat before the thermostat can actually open and allow the coolant to flow properly. So if you have any questions, go check out the swirl pot video and the coolant delete video, and that should add a little bit of information. Of course, if you have more questions, you can contact me, but you can delete every one of those pipes. So the pipes to and from the throttle body, I just cut the barbs off to remove the weight and then didn't need those. I don't live in Denver, Colorado. I don't live in Canada. The car is going to go from trailer to track, track back to trailer. Don't need those. So it's just added complexity. The crossover pipe for emissions, the car heats up just fine. I don't need that extra help. The only advantage to keeping your heater is, of course, you can defrost your windshield. You can use the defogger on track. Now you can put some sort of coating on the inside of your windshield to prevent the fog from getting there anyway, which is what I do, and I haven't had an issue with it, especially if you're running with open windows like most track days require. And the heater core that is inside your air conditioning system, that acts as a small radiator. So I'm going to cover in another video how that can be useful for you, but if you're in a track type scenario, you probably already have a good enough radiator anyway. My car runs ice cold no matter what I'm doing. It's never gonna get above about 165 unless I'm sitting in traffic for hours and hours, and that's what the fan's for. One problem I've seen people run into is how do they deal with the extra barbs once you're done with them. So for a time, I just used these little silicone caps on all of the barbs that I wasn't using. I tried rubber at first, and the rubber would deteriorate and I'd have to replace them every 4 to 5 months. And it was just asking for one of those to blow out and cause a huge coolant leak. So I switched to the silicone and didn't have any issues with these. I just picked these up offline, just in various sizes. That wasn't the solution I wanted. I wanted something more elegant, more final, and I had seen online a lot of people had difficulty welding or brazing the pipe. It was a porous metal and it wasn't sealing well. As I mentioned, the one on the driver's side, I was able to completely delete that because we removed all of its functions, and I just made an aluminum block-off plate, reused the gasket, and sealed up those holes on the side of the motor. And as happy as that block-off plate makes me, I'm even more pleased with the passenger side, because originally, as most of you know, there's a pipe that comes all the way up to about here, and then there's a short little S-shaped piece of pipe that connects the hard line to the radiator. I now have a straight piece of silicone hose that goes all the way from the radiator straight back to where it connects to the back of the engine, because what I did was I cut that brass pipe almost at the end and left about 4 inches of just straight pipe, removing all of the extra barbs, and I was then able to just get a silicone hose that was the same size as both of those pipes, put it on there, clamp them down, and I haven't had any issues with it. It's extremely simple, it's light, it's cheap. I think this hose was like $20 because it's just straight 3-ply silicone hose. So all you have to do is measure the barb on your radiator and on that pipe, make sure that they're almost the same exact size. They should be, mine were. I believe I needed 2 feet, but just measure, double check. It was a little difficult to find it for a good price. Some people wanted upwards of $80. Now, of course, if you can't find anything else, $80 is your best bet. But I think I found this for $20 or $30. And it's worked flawlessly. It makes it really easy to remove the radiator because I can just disconnect both pipes and everything comes out. There's not a whole lot of stuff in front of the engine anymore. Now my lower radiator hose, the one that connects to the bottom of the driver's side of the radiator and comes up to the thermostat, that is still just a normal silicone hose that you can buy for any 350Z. No modifications required there. But that covers my entire coolant system. The only hoses I have is this silicone hose here, the silicone hose going to the driver's side of the radiator, and the silicone hoses for my swirl pot. So the odds of me having a coolant failure are extremely low. And if you watch any form of competitive racing, you know that reliability is huge in racing because you cannot win the race if you don't finish the race. So if I blow a coolant hose halfway through a race, while yes, I can pull over to the side of a track, I still lost the race. So making this as simple as you possibly can, removing any complexities or unnecessary failure points is always a good practice in racing. And of course, you're removing weight and you're making your engine easier to work on. I have so much access to either side of the engine. If I wanted to change my headers out, I remove this pipe right here and the intake, and that's it. I have access to the headers. Whereas before, getting that pipe out was a huge pain the first time. Getting that driver's side pipe out was a huge pain. It's just a lot of complexity that's no longer there. And really, if you're in this track or race type scenario, there's no reason not to. Of course, if you guys have any questions, you can check out those other 2 videos on my cooling system, and you can drop comments below, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys next week.